It's almost spring here in Canada. Usually people who grow tropical fruit trees in pots prefer transplanting their trees when temperatures get warmer, typically in late spring or early summer. But what happens when you need to transplant during the cold season? Well, I did just that this winter with one of my mango trees, and the result was surprising. Of course, I could not resist experimenting with my tree in the process, so there is a twist to the story. This was my 2.5-year-old mango tree at the end of last summer. It was still growing strong outside, but I had to bring it back inside in late September, before the temperature started to drop below 0 degrees Celsius at night time. It had grown in the same 13-inch tall pot for more than a year. My initial plan was to keep it in the same pot for the winter and transplant it in spring. The idea was to avoid any overwatering or root rot issues, like what happened the previous winter after I transplanted it to the 13-inch tall pot sometime in the summer of that year. This winter, a few weeks after I brought it indoors, I noticed the soil was always dry, no matter how much I watered it the day before. This was a clear sign that my tree was already root-bound. Another sign that the tree was root-bound was how light the pot always felt. I could lift the whole tree without fear of breakage. I had two options. I could have kept it in the same pot for the winter like initially planned, in which case I would have had to keep watering it every day. The other option was to transplant my root-bound tree to a bigger pot right away at the beginning of a long winter indoors. I eventually went with the second option. My rationale was that in the dry air of my garage, the first option required a substantial volume of water. Since I only water my plants with rainwater, and since replenishing my rainwater bottles during a Canadian winter is not really an option, I would have had to eventually resort to tap water before spring, for this tree, but also for my other plants. First, I had to find a bigger pot that was close to 13-inch tall. This one was not as tall, but it was close enough. Next, to reduce the risk of overwatering, I made a bunch of holes, effectively making an air pruning pot. As always, the hardest part was to remove the tree from its old pot. The old pot was also a handmade air pruning pot. I had to resort to using a hacksaw blade to gently separate the root ball from the pot. The handmade holes added more friction. So even after using the hacksaw blade, the pot would not come off easily. As expected, the root ball was very dry. I must say it was drier than what I had anticipated, from top to bottom. But I was quite happy with the nice fibrous root ball. My handmade air pruning pot did its job. Actually, I quickly realized that the root system of my mango tree was even more fibrous than what I had hoped for. So I had to loosen the root ball a little bit before filling the bigger pot with new soil. I used a plastic fork for that. But even after I copiously sprayed it with water, the root ball was still quite compact. I did not want to damage the roots, so I focused more on the bottom of the root ball. In the process of spreading the roots at the bottom, I also shortened the height of the root ball, making it fit better inside its new pot. Next, I filled the pot with a homemade soil mix. I used some sandy garden soil with rock dust for fast drainage. Transplanting a plant indoors is not ideal. It gets messy quickly. The bigger the plant, the bigger the mess. Now it's time for the final touch. A thick layer of rock dust to prevent fungus gnats from laying their eggs. The layer of rock dust also has another utility. After watering, the color of rock dust is dark gray. As it dries, the color becomes lighter. This helps me with adjusting the watering, since I can sometimes forget the last time I watered a plant. Before we move on to the experimental part of this winter transplantation, hit the like and subscribe buttons now, and don't forget to also activate notifications to get timely updates. After transplanting my mango tree, I placed it right under a 100 watt equivalent LED light bulb. I did not add any fertilizer to my soil mix. In a matter of a few weeks, new buds formed, quickly swelled, and eventually opened. The two open buds were located on branches that were more directly under the LED bulb. The bud on the third branch, which was the farthest from the bulb, did not open. Also, I noticed that the tallest branch had the fastest swelling bud. The second open bud grew much slower. I then decided to rotate the pot to place the branch with a small and still closed bud directly under the LED bulb. My expectation was that the increased light exposure will nudge the bulb to swell and open, like with the two other branches. I'm not sure what happened next, but I think I triggered some kind of stress response from my mango tree. The leaves on the tallest branch that was moved away from the light source started to grow faster. They will not stop growing. I actually could see the difference day by day. One leaf in particular became monstrous. It was so big and heavy looking that I was afraid it could break any time. Not only were the leaves big and heavy, but their petioles, or the stems at their bases, were also very tender. So the leaves were dangling like wet socks hung out to dry. None of my mango trees under the regular LED lights experienced a similar growth pattern. For example, this younger seedling, which I also transplanted to a bigger pot and pruned afterwards, did put out some new growth during the winter, but nothing like the other mango tree under the stronger light. It also seemed to me that the leaves on the other branch almost stopped growing, while the leaves on the tallest branch were growing out of control. And contrary to my expectations, the closed bud that was now directly under the light bulb did not open. It was only when the monster leaves stopped growing that the leaves on the other branch started to grow again. And during that whole time, the closed bud on the branch directly under the light bulb will not open. Actually, as of the making of this video, it still remains the same. I'm not sure what caused this luxuriant growth, probably a combination of transplanting and strong light exposure followed by lower light conditions after the pot rotation. The biggest leaf eventually reached over 14 inches in length. Mango trees planted in the ground can produce much bigger leaves in tropical regions. But 14 inches is a record for me so far during wintertime for a potted mango tree. If this ever happens to you, just make sure you handle carefully the delicate leaves to avoid damaging them. After a few weeks, the petioles will strengthen and the leaves will straighten up and slowly raise above the lower mature leaves. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.